Hello and welcome back to the Counter Sports podcast. I'm your host, Darren Timson, joined today by Liam Grice, and I'm delighted to say we are joined by the host of Leicester Till I Die TV, Chris. Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, better today with the news. It's probably the least expected news of ever, if you like, just a case of when. Surprised it's now, because we all thought it was going to be the 1st of July if anything was going to happen, because that's the new season for PSR.
Okay.
But apparently, I've since learned that today is payday at the club. So, but it's obviously like the July payment. So, although it's being paid today, they can actually pay him off today. So, I guess they're paying him in full, by the sound of it. It's a negotiated contract with Ruud. So, we've not sacked him. He's not resigned. It's one of those. We all say nice things about each other that we don't mean. And we pay you off when you keep quiet. So that's why it's happened today, because it's payday. So one or two people wanted him. One or two people said he wasn't backed. I'm sure we'll get into a lot of it. I'm celebrating with a nice cold drink. Let's just put it that way.
Well, yeah, we'll start there. So Ruud Van Nistelrooy obviously comes in the November, and for those who are seemingly unaware, he has left Leicester City today. What did you make of his time as the manager, obviously coming in to replace Steve Cooper? And we'll get onto a lot of that as well. But were you, from a neutral point of view, I suppose, me and Liam were talking about it earlier, we're actually surprised it's taken this long for a decision to have been made, really. Interesting to hear you say why it's happened now. What did you make of his time? Do you think he was being backed? What's your thoughts?
I'm so happy that he has gone. I think the guy was like as much use as a one-legged football player, and the guy was absolutely useless. We have got our main striker holds the record of scoring 11 goals in 11 consecutive games. Ruud Van Nistelrooy scored 10 in 10 consecutive games, and yet between them they couldn't, score. Well, I've already got a couple of goals, but we never. His performance was just awful, and I'm not. Me sort of coming up to my mid-60s, so I've seen some bad Leicester teams over the years. Probably the worst one was under Frank McClintock after Jimmy Bloomfield was sacked, and that was bad. That was awful. Peter Taylor was another disaster. Ruud Van Nistelrooy, honestly, mate, he couldn't organise the proverbial, drink up in a pub. To say that he actually had more managerial experience than Enzo is embarrassing, because I'm sorry, they say the sign of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And yet for 19 odd games, he put the same team out with the same formation, playing the same tactics, and apart from a couple, we lost every single one. If you're a decent manager, you look, not even after that number of games, but look at 5 games or something, and go, this isn't working, and I need to play to my team's strengths. And you look at the players you've got, and you put square pegs in square holes. We had so many. He bought a right back in January, and you could argue that he didn't get backed, but we had got. Well, as you know, we've got PSR issues, so we couldn't spend an awful lot of money. We needed a right back. He got a right back. He played him for 45 minutes, approximately, all season. He carried on playing our left back at right back. And the number of goals we conceded down that side. I mean, his fans could see it, and he couldn't. I mean, it was just awful. It was literally... for a lot of youngsters, that will have been the worst football they have seen us play. And most of that team was what got us up. All right, we've had injuries, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse. And to say that, well, we didn't have a big squad or anything like that, we've got one of the best training facilities in the country. it is now, we're starting to see the green shoots that are growing out of that. A lot of youngsters coming through. Even once, it was 5 games to go or something when we were confirmed as being relegated. Why is he still playing a low knee? What's the point? Stick the youngsters in, give them a chance, say to them, it doesn't matter if you lose 3 or 4-0. Bloody hell, the main team are doing that. We're already down. You've got nothing to just go out and show me what you can do for next season. Nothing. Buenete, we'd got him on loan. Nice, good enough player. But why are we playing him once we're down? I mean, it's just the guy has got no managerial nous. He got that job, and don't get me wrong, I have to say, ashamed as I am, I was actually wanted Ruud Van Nistelrooy. But he got that job, our job, after probably the easiest job interview ever. He was in charge for 4 games at Man United. He won 3, I think, and drew 1. 2 of those were against us. And, I know Man United haven't had the best season, but, with a team with that many decent players in, they should be beating the likes of us, Ipswich and Southampton. That's why he got the job. But let's be honest with you, he wanted the Man United job. He wanted to be kept on there as assistant. It wasn't to be, and that's, otherwise he would never have come to us. So, yeah, I absolutely love the guy. What can I say?
Well, I'm sure we'll get onto some of those performances and stuff like that when we go into the pod a little bit. But there's been some talk as well this morning about Sean Dyche and Danny Röhl potentially being some candidates.
Yeah.
Who do you like to see come in? What are your thoughts on those names? Do they fill you with confidence going ahead into the next season?
I'm pleased those 2 are the front 2 runners. Look, we are facing, EPL and EFL are after us. They tried to get us last season. They always say, though, there's no loopholes in laws, just very bad laws. And, they hadn't thought it through, and we got out of it. We didn't do anything illegal, but we got out of a points deduction and what have you. So they're gunning for us now. They really are gunning for us. So they're going to hit us hard. Anything up to a 12-point deduction, transfer embargo, business plan. So you need a firefighter, for me, for that sort of situation. But you've also got to look at and say, what sort of football do we want to play long term? So it's a case of trying to match it. Sean Dyche would get us promoted. We know he can do that. He's a good manager at doing that. Whether it's this year, I don't think it will be, and it definitely won't be, depending on the number of points deductions we get deducted. So it might be 2 seasons. Won't be the end of the world. I think Leeds will do better for having gone up the 2nd season rather than the 1st season. And then Sean Dyche, will he keep us up? More than likely. Will he win us a cup or get us into Europe? Very unlikely. But that would be then for the next manager to do. So for the next, 3 years, we need somebody that's going to come in, can work with no money, can work with the players that he's got, which he has done at Burnley, can work with the youth, but we've said that about every single manager and none of them really have. The opposite to that is Danny Röhl. Now, yeah, he's done a decent job at Sheffield Wednesday, but that's it. But he does play the different sort of style to Sean Dyche. And it's a sort of style that you'd probably want to move. Not Pep, and it so annoys me that everybody wants to play Pep. If anybody, if you bump into Pep at an awards ceremony, then say, hey, he's the best thing since sliced bread. He touched Pep. It just seems to have this thing about him. And what did he win this year? Oh, nothing. So I think that's coming to an end. But the argument is that it would be one-directional football with Sean Dyche. Danny Röhl would be playing the more passing, easy on the eye style. I don't care what style we play. I want to win. You hear these West Ham fans saying, oh, we don't play the old West Ham way. Moyes never played the West Ham way. He won you a bloody European Cup. What's more important? We were 17 points clear at the top of the Championship a couple of seasons ago under Enzo, playing Pep-style football. And everybody was moaning, oh, this is boring and this isn't exciting. 17 points clear, for God's sake. What do you want? So I wouldn't be overly disappointed with either. Personally, I can see the arguments for Dyche. I really can, because over the next 3 seasons, we need somebody that's going to come in, kick arse with some of those players that we've got, stand up to them, and not take any sort of, prisoners or anything, and work with what he's got, put square pegs in square holes, like I say. I mean, we bought Jordan Ayew, play him in that as that lone striker, and he's good. Hold the ball up, he'll go down and get you a free kick. He's not a winger, so why put him on the wing, Ruud? Or even, Cooper. Sean Dyche, I think, will give us that. And like I say, he'll get us up, and he'll probably, look, everybody is saying, like, we didn't look at what he did at Everton as soon as Muisc came in. But Muisc is working with what Dyche left him. And Dyche kept Everton up, even with the points deduction. He kept them up. So let's look at who would take over from Dyche maybe in 3 years' time. But he, I think, is the guy that we need for the next part of our story.
Yeah,
otherwise
and I'm sure
we could end up doing a Luton.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get onto that closer to the end as we look forward. But for the podcast, I think we're going to go through a bit chronologically, just as a look at the season. So just to take us back to last summer, you mentioned him a couple of times, Enzo Maresca guided Leicester to a pretty dominating championship title. But then in early June, he's announced as the Chelsea manager. Steve Cooper then comes in a few weeks later. What did you make of those changes at the time? Were you, I imagine, disappointed to see Enzo go, but were you happy that Steve Cooper came in at that time? And then what was your thoughts as he went through the season? Oh my God!
Look, I was disappointed to see Enzo go. After he'd come in, his brief was to get us promoted. We actually got up by, I think, 7 points in the end. We only came top by 1 point. I was disappointed when he left because it was part of a long-term project. Would he have kept us up playing the style of football that got us up? I mean, it didn't work for Southampton, and they were doing the same sort of style. Look at them. At the time, I was really, really, really annoyed. But look, I accept it. We've all, got clubs where if a manager does well, maybe not Liverpool, but certainly Wrexham and Leicester, if we've got managers in who do well, we know they're going to be poached. Yeah. And it's something we have to accept. And I was disappointed, but looking back, I mean, I didn't think he'd last at Chelsea, to be honest with you, but fair play to what he's done there. So I was disappointed, angry at the time, but like I say, now it's a job to them. He's got no allegiance to Leicester. It's a job to him, so good luck to him. He did what he was brought in, and he got us back up. The problem we then had, very similar to this season, is we were under the threat of a points deduction. Who would come? Our owner was trying to get into bed with Graham Potter. He must have asked Graham Potter to be our manager 3 or 4 times. Now, I'm not being honest. You don't ask a girl out that many times if she keeps saying no, do you? Because he wanted to play that style of football. Now, the rumours are that our director of football wanted Dyche. The owner wanted, wanted Cooper. The owner wanted Potter, but there we were, threatened of anything, 6, 7, 8 point deduction, again, transfer embargoes. They weren't rushing to our door, and Steve Cooper was happy to take the job. He had the chance to go to Burnley, and he turned them down because he wanted to stay in the Premier League and have a go with us. At the time, I wanted him. I was happy for him because I thought, look at the job he did at Nottingham Forest. Yeah. Again, look at what he did and look at then what his following manager did. But he kept them up. They had a points deduction as well, and he still kept them up. And look, all we wanted to do last season was finish 17th. Anything over and above that was a bonus. Could Steve Cooper keep... Well, we'll never know, will we? But at the start of the season, I'm thinking, could Steve Cooper get us to 17th? Yes, he can. And I honestly believe that he probably would have done. Again, it wasn't easy on the eye, his football style. And it's funny that fans were going, we don't want Cooper, we don't know, like we had a big choice. You know, we're not the team that won the Premier League and the FA Cup. We're a lot worse than that now. And beggars couldn't be choosers. And he was prepared to come. His style, like I say, wasn't easy on the eye. And of course, he had the Nottingham Forest link, which always amazes me because, we can't have him because, you know, he was the Nottingham Forest manager. Hang on a second. Martin O'Neill used to play for Nottingham Forest. Wes Morgan came to us from Nottingham Forest and is one of our most loved defenders ever. When it suits you, you want to say you don't like Forest. He came in, and I have to say, looking back on it, he didn't have the worst of starts. I think our problem was that quite early on into the season, we beat the PSR app. So suddenly we thought, well, we're not going to get the PSR points deduction. We're going to finish 10th or 8th or even creep into Europe. Never going to happen. But it did give us that false sense of entitlement, if you like. And when we looked at the games that we had at the start, thinking it's actually not a bad start. You know, the worst thing we wanted was sort of Liverpool and Man City and Chelsea and all of those. We got Tottenham Hotspur in the first game. Well, we didn't know how bad their season was going to be, but, you know, we got a draw off them. We then lost to Fulham, who gave us a footballing lesson. I have to say, it was only 2-1, but my God, you could see that they was so much the Premier League team. Lost to Villa 2-1. So we weren't getting stuffed here. Drew with Palace, drew with Everton. Arsenal then came along, but we were 2-0 down. We got it back to 2-2, and we lost 4-2. We then beat Bournemouth, our first win, and then we went and beat Southampton in the 96th minute with a Jordan Ayew goal. So looking back, it wasn't the worst start in the world. And I don't think Steve Cooper was given enough time.
I mean, from a neutral perspective, and obviously being slightly biased to Steve Cooper as he is from around here, I was delighted to see him get a chance in the Premier League. And I didn't think, like you said, he had a terrible start to his time at Leicester. Do you think the board maybe jumped the gun a little bit with his sacking? Obviously, he was under a lot of pressure and maybe expectations weren't being met. But in hindsight, given what followed Steve Cooper, do you think maybe they jumped the gun a little bit?
Yeah, 200% they did. If you're going to, get rid of a manager, don't get rid of a manager when he's out of the, we're not in the relegation zone.
Yeah.
Of actually winning, games. We did. When we had Claudio Ranieri, when he won the Premier League with us, the following season we sacked him because we were flirting with the relegation. Now that was different because we weren't expecting to do that. With this team, we weren't expecting to do anything other than have a relegation fight. And what annoys me is that they stuck with Brendan Rodgers too long. That decision should have been made earlier because, again, they couldn't back him. That team needed a rebuild. And because of European PSR in that particular instance, we couldn't spend money. So, but that decision should have been after the World Cup because that was the year of Qatar's World Cup fiasco. But so they stuck with him too long because we only got relegated by 1 point and we were doing all right under Dean Smith. Cooper they got rid of way, way, way too soon. And then Van Nistelrooy, I mean, what do you have to do to get the sack?
Yeah.
If you look at the season, I'm looking, it's red. I mean, the only win that he got in that awful run was against Tottenham. And look where they finished. There was, he should have been given longer. Would he have kept us up? We don't know. But I think it'd have been a lot closer than it was.
Well, I'm going to lead into a question here. I can probably think what the biggest regret of the season was. But do you have any more regrets with regards to how the season went? Maybe not starting a certain player as much, or the transfers that came in or came out.
Where do we start?
I
Put
thought
your
there might
feet-
be a few.
yeah, put your feet up, guys. Get a brew. Here we go. Steve Cooper wasn't necessarily the mistake, or something I regret, and I wanted him at the start. Letting him have his choice of players possibly was. He went out and said, look, you're not going to blame me for getting relegated because I bought untried players. I'm going to go for experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we got Skip, we got Ayew, we got, for God's sake, I can't believe I'm saying this, we bought Dakota Reed. We got all these, and he was going for experience. Now, the interesting thing is, Ipswich went the other way.
Yeah.
Ipswich bought a lot of championship players, and I think they'll be favourites to go back up next season. But they bought a load of, and it didn't work for them either. So we went experienced, they went youth and hungry, and we both ended up getting relegated. So that was a regret. The regret, obviously, of not giving Cooper long enough. The regret of letting Ruud Van Nistelrooy have too long, which is probably. Would we have stayed up if we got rid of him earlier? I don't know, because the team were absolutely awful. But then maybe if another manager had come in, you can get in. Look at Vestergaard. Everybody hated Vestergaard, and then in the championship when we got relegated, Enzo came in and he was like primetime Messi. Do you know what I mean? He was absolutely brilliant. He moved Ndidi into a slightly different position. Ndidi, primetime Ronaldo. I mean, so change of manager can have that sort of effect. Obviously, with the new manager bounce. Another regret is not trying the youngsters. We have got, like I say, we've got this amazing training ground. We've never really seen the benefits, but now we've got Jeremy Monga, Jake Evans, Will Alvis, Sammy Braybrook, Ben Nelson, all players that have been out on loan or just coming through that were never really given the chance. Jake Evans comes on, he's our striker, comes on in the 94th minute in a 96-minute game, never touched the ball. What is the point of that? Monga gets 5, 10, 15 minutes here. Yes, I know he's only 15. He's only training a couple of days. But and he kept saying, I'm going to play the youngsters. I'm going to play the youngsters. He is such a BS, is Ruud Van Nistelrooy, because I'm doing my best not to swear, because he kept coming out and saying, I'm going to play the youth. One week he came out and he said, this weekend, Jeremy Monga and Jake Evans will be in the team, be in the squad. So, of course, they will have gone off, both 15 years old, telling the parents, telling the mates. Yeah, Monga was there, Evans wasn't. What a disappointment for that lad, And then suddenly when it's going like, because he was, losing to Liverpool, that actually, relegated us. Thanks, mate. Cheers for that. But I mean, it was a case of turning off the life support, really. But at that point, you're relegated, so you've got to think about next season. So do you then go, right, let's just chuck, as I said earlier, just chuck the youngsters in, see what they can do. We're down, it doesn't matter if we lose. It's not going to hurt their confidence because what are they doing? They're down anyway. Or do you play, as I say, a loanee that is due to go back at the end of the season that we're not going to have again? It's just decisions like that and I wanted Ruud Van Nistelrooy. I've got to say, I wanted Cooper. I wanted Cooper gone. I wanted Ruud Van Nistelrooy in. I wanted Ruud Van Nistelrooy gone. This is why I don't do the lottery. But in my defence, I will say that I did say that Claudio Ranieri was a great appointment. So in my defence, I will throw that.
Got that one then.
I'll throw that one. I've even got proof. I've even got proof of that. But no. So so many regrets.
So can I actually ask then, what did you see in Ruud Van Nistelrooy that made you want him? Because I remember at the time I was looking at it as well, and then when there was the news that was coming out that Leicester were looking to appoint Ruud Van Nistelrooy, I can't lie, me sitting as a neutral, I was thinking, why the hell would a team want to appoint a manager based off of 4 games? What did you see that you thought he would be a good appointment?
When we appointed Enzo, he had, like I say, he'd been sprinkled with pep dust, and he'd been the under 21 manager there and won the under 21 league. But as a manager, he'd only had 6 games. I think it was 6 or 12. I can't remember which, at Parma, and then they'd sacked him. So he hadn't got a great managerial experience. But of course, at that point, we got relegated. We were all on a bit of a low. And here we were appointing a manager who 6 days before we appointed him was holding aloft the Champions League trophy. It was that you forgot everything else. This is he's a Pep disciple. Look at him. He's got the Champions League trophy. Yeah, he's the sort of guy we want. And as it happened, that worked out. So Ruud Van Nistelrooy, like I say, the easiest job application ever. 4 games, winning, not losing 4, winning 3, but 2 of those, like I say, were against a very poor Leicester side. But he was with PSV, and although he left under a bit of a cloud, he actually won, I think, the equivalent of their FA Cup or League Cup. So he had won a trophy, and he had been manager for a whole season. So it was kind of like, this is Ruud Van Nistelrooy, who, he knows how to attack. He's a goal scorer. He's a striker. He'll know what he's doing. He had got a tune out of a very, very, very poor Man United team. And, when you look at after him, they didn't do so well. I know it was only 4 games, but he did, for those 4 games, even though 2 of them were against us, he did do well. So I think when you look, for me, when I looked at him and thought, PSV, he's won a trophy. He was there all season. He's had more managerial experience than Enzo had. And he'd had, obviously, 4 games in the Premier League. And of course, and it's always the risk with appointing ex-managers, Wayne Rooney, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard up until Coventry. They've all got great names and they've all reasonably failed as managers. And obviously I'd Ruud to that list now. But that's what I saw. I saw the at least the 1 season experience, the excitement of getting a Ruud in, because had we employed Joe Bloggs from Stockport because he'd, got them promoted or something, we wouldn't have got that buzz, if you like, which is what we needed. And as Monty Python said, though, he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy.
So when you look at the season, from the first 12 games, Leicester took obviously 10 points in that run. But then after Ruud was appointed manager, he'd only taken, 15 points in the next 25 games, I think it was.
Yeah.
Do you look back at the season, and obviously there's the regret of maybe Ruud not going well. Steve Cooper's didn't really work out the way you hoped after a decent start either. But then you look at someone like Tottenham being 17th in the league on 38 points. How much do you look back on the season and maybe think, well, if we had better players, if we had a better manager, it wouldn't have really made a difference anyway? Does that come into your thinking at all as well?
A little bit. I mean, we went down, how many points? Was it 15 or 13 points we went down by? We had 25. Tottenham had 38, so 13 points.
13 points, yeah.
So that's 4 wins and a draw. Wouldn't have been impossible to relegate them, would it? And when you look, when Steve Cooper was sacked, we weren't in the relegation zone. We were out of the relegation zone, and there were 6 teams that were down there with us. Wolves were down there with us, and they changed the manager. All right, they only ended up in 16th, but at one point they jumped quite far up the table. West Ham were kind of in that mix as well, and they managed to turn things around. Everton, look at what happened to them when they got David Moyes in. And those 3 and Palace were down there as well, although Palace didn't change the manager, but they obviously had a lot of injuries, so they climbed away. So we were one of 6 or 7 teams that could have gone down, and at the end we was one of 3 that was destined to go down. But 13 points, wouldn't it have been funny to have relegated Tottenham? Or even Man United. I'm not sure who I would have sooner relegated, but either or, to be honest with you. So yes, but let me just say, let's say Ruud had kept us up, we'd have probably stuck with Ruud then. Ruud is not going to have that much money to spend, if any, in this window. We've already been linked with Michael Keane from Everton because he's on a free. And if we get a transfer embargo, I'm actually hoping that we do, because then we might have to play the youngsters, and I think the youngsters are the future of the club. And we've tied a few of them down to long-term deals. So had we just somehow stayed up, Ruud would have, I think, kept his job and would have probably gone down next season, because there was nothing there that I saw that made me think he is a Premier League or even a Championship or even a League One, that's how far down I'll go, manager. You look at the games that we won. We beat Bournemouth 1-0. That was our first win in October. Bournemouth did everything bar put the ball in the net. I think they hit the post 3 or 4 times. Southampton, we were 2-0 down at half time, and Jordan Ayew got the winner in the 96th minute. So you could say we didn't deserve that, but we got it. First game under Ruud Van Nistelrooy, 3-1, we beat West Ham, who again at that time weren't particularly brilliant. We beat Tottenham 2-1. Did the one team in the league that didn't beat us. But again, that was Tottenham. What season were they having? We beat Southampton 2-0 at home. Now, if you're not going to beat that team this season, then I mean, they nearly beat Derby's record, didn't they? And then we beat, Ipswich Town 2-0. Well, that was the other team that got relegated. So it's not, and when you look at that, is that the guy that you want leading you forward? The guy, I could say, for 15, 16 games, played the same players in the same formation, getting the same result and not changing it. He's just not. He's useless. I can't say anything else without swearing. The guy is totally useless. We've got so many records for the wrong reason. I think we went on the longest run without winning in Premier League history, or even in top flight history, not just Premier League, in top flight history. 9 games without scoring a goal. How do we not score a goal when, like I say, your manager scored 10 in 10 and your main striker scored 11 in 11? 9 home games without scoring. It is embarrassing. When we had Nigel Pearson, and the season before we won the Premier League, we did the Great Escape, and he came in, and Nigel Pearson came in, and I had a season ticket then, and I was watching the games, and we weren't giving up. We were fighting. We were losing 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. It was always quite close. And had we gone down, we would have said, well done, Leicester. You went down fighting. Nice one. And that's all you can hope for from your team. This team, honestly, they couldn't be a Sunday pub football team. They are that awful. I've done more with FIFA 23, whatever it was. When you get your buttons wrong and the player runs off the pitch with the ball, or goes forward, you think you're about to score and it's a pass instead of a shot. That was literally, I thought Ruud Van Nistelrooy was controlling our team with a PlayStation controller. That's how bad we were.
Oh, well, to get off Ruud for a second.
Please.
I don't think it's any more positive though, unfortunately. But as a club that has now been relegated back-to-back times, but a club that was in the Premier League for almost the best part of a decade, really. What do you think is the reason promoted clubs and certain clubs seem to be struggling in the Premier League a little bit more now? I mean, obviously you saw the 3 promoted clubs get relegated this season. It happened last season. Do you think that's got anything to do with a lack of experience with the managers, or the squad's just completely not at the level for the Premier League, and that's by no fault of some of these clubs? Is it just too much disparity between the leagues now?
Yeah, that's the one. There's too much disparity between you guys in the top flight, and I mean, when you look at the Premier League, and I know this is an overused phrase, but the Big Six. You know, Sky Sports' favourite 6. And I do get that, because let's be honest with you, are more people going to watch, you know, Liverpool versus Brighton, or are they going to watch more, you know, Leicester versus Ipswich? They're going to support. You're going to get more viewers, and they're in there to make money. So I do get that to a point. But interestingly, when we won the Premier League, and I've got the trophy behind me, not the trophy, I have to say, but a duplicate one. But when we won the Premier League, a board director from one of the top 6 clubs came out and said, we can't let that happen again. And that, I'm not saying it's 100% true, but it is in a newspaper. It is actually, and you know, the heading was that was the day that football died. We tried, we'd got to the top table, and we liked it, and we wanted to stay there, pretty much like Leeds did. But you sail too close to the sun, you get burnt. And we could do one or two things. We then went out and were spending 30-40 million pound on players that weren't worth it, quite frankly. But you know, we thought we were going to be the new, you know, Liverpool or Man United. It's the big 7 now. You know, welcome along, guys. No, that was never going to happen. So we were spending money, and look, any club worth its salt, when you're planning for the next season, when you've just finished 5th and 8th, you don't necessarily plan for relegation. But that's what happened, because we had been in Europe for 2 years running, coming out of COVID, and UEFA said to us, be careful of PSR. With, you know, if you're in Europe again, you might get chucked out because of your spending. And that wasn't the Premier League, that was UEFA. And so we stopped. That was Brendan's year when he wanted to rebuild and couldn't have it because we didn't have the money to spend. It's a case of you know, if you want to compete, you've got to spend the money. Now look, we've got rich owners, you know, compared to a lot of clubs. They're certainly not in the Man City, Newcastle sort of, you know, bracket, but they're not poor. And we tried to go along for the ride, and you know, we got thrown out. And that's the thing. What do you do? So are you then overcautious? And if you're overcautious, well, you're doomed before you even start. You know, I mean, that's the thing with us as well. You know, we're not owned by King Power, although a lot of people think we are. We're actually owned by Top and his family. But King Power, obviously, he owns as well. But they are in huge financial trouble at the moment. With you know, you've probably seen it, news in Thailand. So we don't know what that, you know, when it rains, it pours, doesn't it? And it's difficult. You know, if you're a club coming up, look at Burnley. They went down. They've come straight back up. Fair play to Burnley. What do? They can't play the same style of football, because they tried that with Vincent Kompany. Southampton tried that. So they're going to have to sort of change something. Do they spend, or do they stick? Either way, you're doomed if you do one, you're doomed if you do the other. The Premier League is becoming an elite group of 17 at the moment. I wish we were in there, because we would have been a couple of seasons ago, but unless you get somebody really having a bad season like we did and dropping down, you are going to struggle. And everything, look, football these days for me, and I'm not just saying that because of what's happened to us, it's not about football anymore, it's about money. That league is decided by 12 guys, whatever it is, at the FA in their suits round a table, saying, right, they've overspent. Look, I'm to the point now with PSR where I'm saying, oh, for God's sake, just give us whatever you're going to give us. Let's just accept it and let's move on, because I'm just getting fed up with it all the time. But why are the clubs, and it's always the clubs that are sort of not in the big 6 that are getting done? Everton, Forest, us. Chelsea never get done. What the hell is happening with Man City? You know, but they go for the smaller clubs. But it's the smaller clubs that are trying to compete with the bigger clubs. It's a catch-22, and if they're not careful, the Premier League, and everybody watches it for the excitement. And in fairness to the Premier League, they love the fact that Leicester City won it. That for them, as a marketing tool, is probably the best thing that ever happened to them, because you expect, and well done to Liverpool for winning it last season, by the way, but you expect Liverpool, Man City, whoever to win it. The fact that Leicester did, it was like a great selling point. So it wasn't them that said it can't happen again. But if you want us to compete, you've got to let us have some freedom. You've got to let us have, we're not. People are selling players. Chelsea, mentally, they're selling youth players that comes with the system to try and get around PSR. We sold. When we came up last time, we actually had a 40 million PSR threat hanging over us. We sold Dewsbury Hall to Chelsea for 30. Enzo went off to Chelsea for £10 million. So we got our 40 million there done and dusted. We bought Golding from Chelsea for 5 million. He was a homegrown player. So they gave Dewsbury Hall a 5-year contract. So basically it was like something like, or 6-year contract. It was 5 million a year. But we paid 5 million for Golding. So for a year, that money is not affecting their PSR. Now, is it right that teams are sort of doing that rather than worrying about payments, worrying about players and formations? No, it's a complete joke now, football. Sorry, you did ask the question.
No, you're spot on. Obviously, Darren is in that top 6, so it doesn't really affect Liverpool.
No, I could see from his reaction. He was going on, just going over his head. He's going, what? What's this?
But as someone who supports a club that, it sounds weird to say, has lofty ambitions of maybe breaking into the league like that, it is a bit worrying to see these teams sort of huddle together and sort of make it an exclusive group. So I completely get what you're coming from.
We want the Wrexhams of this world to have that story. Leicester, when we did that, everybody apart from Tottenham fans wanted us to win that because it was different. It was a great story. We'd gone from relegation certainties to Premier League winners in 2 seasons. Bournemouth. I live in Bournemouth, and I can remember when I came down here some 15 years ago, players with buckets outside the Pavilion Theatre collecting money because they've got minus 17 points and they were about to go out of business. And they got to the Premier League. Wrexham, like you say, going from where they were now to the Championship. Those are the stories that make football. But football's changing, so you're not going to get those stories soon.
Well, I think let's talk about a positive, shall we? A good story to do with Leicester. I can see you've got a shirt with his name on in the background. Mr. Leicester, if you like, Jamie Vardy.
Yes.
A bittersweet name for you at the moment. Obviously, he's leaving at the expiry of his contract, but I bet you've got nothing but good things to say about that man.
Look, I have complained about him this year. I'm surprised. But then he's not got the service this year. That's the problem. But when he had it, maybe back in the day, he would have put some of those away. Who knows? But look, this guy is a Leicester legend. They should name a stand after him. They should have another statue outside for him. This guy, and everybody laughed when we paid £1 million for him. He was at Fleetwood Town.
Yep.
It was still a non-league club, but had just got promoted. And you know what? He struggled. He struggled when he first came. He considered walking away. And Nigel Pearson, Craig Shakespeare, and Vichai, our past chairman, put their arms around him and said, look, no, we believe in you. This is why we paid £1 million for you. Forget the money, just go out and play and enjoy it. And, like you said, the rest is history. Had the chance to go to Arsenal. Arsenal thought they had it in the bag. He drove home and changed his mind. And I think he was being offered so much more money at Arsenal, but would they have played to his style? I think with Arsenal, they'd have done what Roy Hodgson did at England, stick him on the wing. And that's not him. You play over the top to him. So, for that thing alone, he will always be remembered. He's sticking with us, turning down Arsenal. And for that, a legend is a oft used word in football, but he is, 11 in 11. my God, I was there for the first of those 11 against Bournemouth, and it was just amazing to watch. And funny thing was, once he got his 11, he didn't score for 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
He got that. He got into the England squad. I mean, that goal he scored against Germany, I think in his first game where he backheeled it in. The guy, I mean, good luck to him. There's certain clubs I don't want him to go to. I mean, if he turned up at Forest, he turned up at Leeds. Obviously, he's been linked with Wrexham a lot. I don't think that will happen because I don't think he wants to play for a club that he would come up against Leicester with. I think the only exception to that is Sheffield Wednesday, because obviously he's a Sheffield Wednesday fan and he loves scoring against Sheffield United. And you know what? Leicester will miss him. But if he moves abroad, let's say, I don't know whether he'll go to Saudi Arabia, but if he goes to America, which he's being linked with, the Premier League will miss him. Because we'll miss his shithousery, excuse my French, but we will. And that's the thing, the fans come and they're going on about his misses and all this sort of thing. He loves it, and it doesn't affect him. And he goes and he'll give it back. Telling the Newcastle fans that we'd won the Premier League once and they hadn't, and all that. There's not enough of that in the game. There's no fun in the game anymore. These sort of players, they've been edged out. But the guy, if he came in now, I'd bend over and have his children. I'm sorry, but I would. That's how much. Was it time for him to go? I think so. This season, had we had another striker that was up to something, and we did loan Edouard and never saw him. To be honest with you, he fell out with Van Nistelrooy very quickly. But he should have been playing the last 10-15 minutes as the super sub, like David Fairclough at Liverpool. There's a name from the past. But he should have been coming on for that last 10-15 minutes when the opposition defence are tired and they're sat there saying, oh, damn, Vardy's coming on. That's all we need, sort of thing. But he wasn't. At 38, he shouldn't have been playing 90 minutes week in, week out. So I think it's right that he's gone. It's a shame that it was on this way with a relegation. I think he's not getting on with the director of football because he thanked everybody at the club apart from him. And I'm glad. I was surprised when his last game was Ipswich. Very surprised because we still had the Bournemouth game. But look, we were down anyway. And Ipswich was his 500th game.
And he scored 200 goals.
Yeah. On the day that he signed for the club, it happened to fall on the same day. And yeah, like you just said, he got his 200th goal. And fair play to the guy. Our greatest ever player, you can never say that because it's different styles, different eras and what have you. But in modern times, yes.
From an outside perspective, I'm sure Darren will agree as well. I mean, we've grown up with watching Vardy at Leicester, and he's always been that constant goal threat and sometimes constant annoyance if your team was playing against him. But like you said, that's what you need.
He scored a few against Liverpool, I remember.
My favourite, I'm sorry about this, Darren, but my favourite ever Jamie Vardy goal.
I know what you're about to say.
You know what I'm about to say, don't you? Is that it was? I think that was the Premier League winning year, wasn't it? And typical Leicester move. Mahrez pumping upfield, Vardy bounce once, bing over. Thank you very much. That and his England goal, they're my two favourite Jamie Vardy goals. Sorry, Darren, but I have to say.
It brings up bad memories of Mignolet, that for me, to be honest.
Let's look a bit to the future then, shall we? Obviously, championship season now. Fixtures got released yesterday. Are there any games in particular you're looking forward to seeing?
I must admit, I thought our first game was going to be against yourselves. I just had that feeling in my water. Look, the first game is Sheffield Wednesday at home on the Sunday. Obviously, every game's on Sky that weekend, isn't it? So that's exciting. Couple of derbies in there, Derby and Coventry. They're always fun. As much as we have banter with the Forest fans, it's been great having them in the Premier League because you've got that derby. It's like Liverpool not having an Everton in there. I presume Swansea's a derby for yourselves.
Yeah, sort of.
So you've got that. You've got that this season, sort of thing. It does help. So those are sort of the games that we're looking forward to. But we accept that it's not going to be. This isn't going to be Enzo Mark II. We're not going to walk it like that again, and we have to accept that. But fingers crossed that we'll at least not show ourselves up like we did this season just gone.
Oh yeah, just to follow up on that, that was my next question. What is your realistic aim for this season? Obviously, with the points deduction maybe looming over you, you've said you're not expecting to go up. Do you think sneak a playoff place just outside the playoff places?
It very much is dependent upon the points deduction. They do say that it could be up to 12 points. I think that's stupid when you only get 9 points for going out of business.
Yeah.
I mean, let's bring a bit of sense into this. Punish us because we've broken the rules. Like I say, fans now we're getting to say just do it and get it over with. But 12 points is I think is stupid. We know we're probably going to, and I think we're going to get more than 6 because in this division there's more teams, so there's more games, so you got more chance of clawing it back. I don't think not going up this season would be the worst thing in the world, because I look at Leeds, and I think Leeds, out of the 3 promoted sides, have probably got the best chance of staying up. But I think for me, that's because they've had that extra year sort of get ready. So if we don't go up, not the end of the world. Downside of that is it's a difficult division to get out of. I think Ipswich have got it nailed on. I think they will be favourites, and I think they will go up winning it. Playoffs, yeah, I'll take the playoffs. I mean, it's a bit of a we had the playoffs for about 5 years out of 6 under Brian Little and what have you. It was our sort of team day out, our challenge trip at the end of the season. We're off to Wembley. Good memories and bad memories, both sides of that. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to think playoffs. I don't think top 2. If we can just sneak the playoffs, even with the points points deduction, I think we could turn around and say that was a decent season.
Just one last question from me. Obviously, both Wrexham's going to be in this league as well, and we potentially like winding Grice up in this podcast. So, where do you think Wrexham, or how well do you think Wrexham are going to do in the Championship this season?
That to me.
Yeah, that's to you.
Yeah. Well, now then, I might lose friends here. Ipswich have done it. Ipswich have gone back to back. I'm sure you get that thrown at you an awful lot. Yeah. Like I said before, I do like the Wrexham story. You've got to be careful with your money, and you've obviously got some very good owners, and I think it's a great story. I love the Wrexham story. I think it might be a step too far for you. I actually did a show a couple of nights ago on my channel with a Burnley fan, because obviously he was down last season, and he sort of did a league prediction from 1 to 24, and I think he had you in 13th.
I'd happily take that.
Exactly. I think you would, yes. He had Birmingham in 5th, so I wouldn't read too much into that. but no, I think if you had that, because again, look at Ipswich, they went straight up, and it's great again, a great story, but it didn't really do them any favours, did it? Apart from financially. So I think you take, as you've just said, you take 13, stay up and consolidate. And I think when you get promoted, that is what it's all about. It's just consolidating in that league for 1, maybe 2 seasons and then going up. Look, how many years ago, 5 years ago, you'd have bitten your hand off to be in this position, wouldn't you?
Well, 5 years ago was Eastleigh away, and now we've got Southampton away. So it's,
yes. Well, you'll beat Southampton. You'll easily beat Southampton.
If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Chris from Leicester Till I Die TV for joining me and Liam today. It was a real pleasure to talk to him about Leicester's struggles this season and their potential aims next season, considering Leicester's potential points deduction from the EFL. Please consider subbing to the channel if you did enjoy this video. We're on 106 subscribers and we have a goal to reach 500 by the start of the new Premier League season. So if you could help us in any way to achieve that, we'd be very grateful. But for now, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.